How do you see the dynamic shift in the marketing space overall?
Google doesn't want to lose its dominance in the market.
What platforms or strategies do you actually suggest for them to actually take up? Thinking about a typical coaching, consulting, or high-ticket business.
I think it really depends on the particular business.
Do you have any suggestions towards using video to actually produce SEO worthy?
There does seem to be a trend, particularly with younger generations, that they want to see rather than...
Do you think they should actually focus on SEO in the first place?
Absolutely do SEO, even if you're, a very, very small business with very limited marketing budget, or even if you're doing it yourself, you can absolutely do that.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody who's actually listening to this podcast right now? First of all, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Nikhil Sai Show, which is hosted by me, the Nikhil Sai. And guess what's going on today? We are back with another amazing guest. The guest who's actually joining us today is crazy. I mean, he's a best-selling author, he's a very important strategic mind, and he's an experienced digital marketing professional. And the guy who's actually jumping on has transformed the presence of SMEs globally. Size is no barrier to digital dominance. With his passion and teaching and his knack for deconstructing the digital marketing landscape into actionable strategies. So let's not actually waste any more time, and actually let's welcome the head ninja himself to the podcast today, who is actually going to cover a lot of values. Let's actually welcome Tim Camera Kitchen. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me. Thanks for such a wonderful introduction. Looking forward to being with you.
Yeah. I'm super excited. I think our community would love to actually get into your ninja tactics on how to actually scale ruthlessly with ROI focus and stuff like that. We also have all the stuff and questions for you. But before that, we would love to understand your personality types. Where do you actually come from? What are your roots and grounds? So if you could go a little bit, before, the early on of your journey and share a little bit so that we have a better understanding of what human you are, that would really help.
Yeah, no problem. So I started my sort of career, if you will, in a completely different area. So I was actually a professional drummer. I studied music and always thought I was going to be in a band, and I lived on a farm with my bandmates, and I was just full-time drumming. The band didn't pay particularly well, so in my spare time I used to record for people over the internet, and it was very early days of doing this. So I set up a website and started promoting myself online, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was actually learning the basics of running Google Ads and building a website, promoting myself, and doing SEO as well. And I did that for a few years and it was okay, but then my life really changed when I built a website for my next door neighbor who was a plasterer, and this website completely changed his life. I got it ranked at the top of Google, and he went from having no work at all and just being sat in his house sort of waiting for things to happen to having so many jobs come in that he was having to recruit other people to send these jobs out to, and he got loads of big contracts and corporate projects. He did some TV work as well, and all because of this tiny little WordPress website that I'd knocked up for him in a few minutes. So I was completely stunned by this and thought this looks really fun. And I built a few other websites for tradespeople. I did probably another, 30, 40 different websites for plumbers, heating engineers, electricians, plasterers, roofers, scaffolders, all sorts, because word spreads in that sort of community. And then before long, I realized that this was kind of becoming a bit bigger than me. So I started hiring some freelancers to help me do it. I wrote a book about the process I was using to get these websites ranked, and that book became a bestseller. And then I started getting more inquiries than I could deal with. So I built that into an agency, Exposure Ninja. That was in 20, and today we're a team of about 80. We do SEO, content marketing, build websites, conversion rate optimization, email marketing, and loads of PPC as well, and absolutely love it. I'm actually entering the next phase of my journey, which is buying other companies and buying other agencies. It has been quite a journey for me. It's really fun. It remains my passion, and I've just been spending today researching the latest in Google's AI technology, and I think we're about to see a huge shift in digital marketing over the next few years. So yeah, that's me. That's what I'm about.
Yeah, I'm quite excited as well, and we will definitely get into the deeper roots of what's going to happen, the shift of AI and the marketing, and how Google actually ranks websites. It's changing. I mean, at a point of time, backlinks were just like votes. No matter what website was giving it, it was counting, but everything changed, especially with ChatGPT and Bard and how people are actually consuming information. I'm excited to get there. And now let me ask you a question. The first icebreaker, complete search engine dynamic is shifting, especially with ChatGPT and straight to the answer kind of tools are actually being popular? How do you see the dynamic shift in the marketing space overall?
It's a really good question. And to be honest, I don't actually think that anybody, including the companies, really know the answer to this. We've seen Google over the years be essentially a way that people find websites. They find web pages, and this is always what Google was. It just wanted to surface you the web page with the best answer. Whereas now what we're seeing is that people are using different types of search engine. People are asking ChatGPT for the things that they used to ask Google. And Google has been noticing this. Google doesn't want to lose its dominance in the market. It makes $1 billion a year from search ads. It doesn't want to lose that. So it has to adapt. And it's been building its own version of ChatGPT into the search results page, something called SGE. And this is a really quite profound shift for Google, because this takes it from, instead of giving searchers the best website for their search, it's actually just trying to answer the question in the search results page. And of course, there are links to websites in this new AI answer, but it's really not the same. Now, we don't yet know what sort of impact this is going to have on users. We don't know if users are going to like this, if they're going to prefer this. We don't know if people are going to be clicking through to the websites. We don't know if people are just going to scroll past this whole AI thing altogether and just go straight to the search results. It's really uncharted territory. And I think a lot of marketers aren't even aware of this potential shift coming. But even the ones that are, I think, are looking at this with a layer of uncertainty and saying, we don't really know what's going to happen here. We're just going to have to watch what people do and watch how these tools evolve, because we are still so early on in this sort of development.
That's quite interesting. I mean, it's kind of scary, especially when you don't know how it's going to turn out. Now we are like clueless on what moves to actually make. But coming back, if you're actually thinking about like a regular business, especially in 20 coming forward, like for them to actually spend their marketing dollars the right way, what platforms or strategies do you actually suggest for them to actually take up? Thinking about a typical coaching, consulting, or high ticket business, somebody who has a $3,000 or above product, what do you think is the best thing for them to do to sell on phone?
I think it really depends on the particular business, but normally we see businesses go into one of two directions. So you can either take a search focus. So if you're a coaching or consulting business, for example, and you're solving a particular problem for people go onto Google and they type for answers to that problem. So let's say that you're a life coach or something, or people might be searching for questions about, I'm feeling stuck in my life, or how to find your purpose and things like that. And building content on your site, answering those questions, has always been a sort of a good strategy and a way of getting people onto your website in the first place. So that's one direction that you can go. And of course, you can also rank your site for life coach, local life coach, those types of phrases. The other direction that people can take is into social media and making sure, or trying to produce content that gets in front of people when they're in the sort of mindset for this type of thing. And this can be harder to predict. You don't necessarily know when someone's going to be searching, when they're most in pain, or when they're looking into this topic. It can be quite difficult to get in front of them at that specific moment. But typically we'll see businesses in this space run Facebook ads, run, Twitter ads, LinkedIn ads, potentially if it's a professional coaching business, or run YouTube ads to try and get in front of people. So normally our clients fit into one of these two categories. They're either a search first business, or they're what we'd call an interruption first business, where their advertising and their marketing model is about interrupting someone while they're scrolling on social media and saying, hey, we got this thing. Most of what we do is in the search area. And despite all the change that's coming from SGE and AI and search, I do think that, having a really solid search focused content strategy is still going to be a viable route in 2020, and actually might become more important. One of the things that we've noticed about Google's new AI search engine is, even if your website hasn't been ranking particularly well in the regular search results, let's say you're a smaller business or you have a less optimized site, you can actually get some really good visibility in SGE by leapfrogging some of the more established competitors in that space. So I think you'll see a lot of coaching consultancy businesses look at this and say, actually, do you know what? This is a real opportunity for us to get ahead here.
That's quite interesting. Now, I have a different question here. Understanding the user behavior who's actually consuming the content, I mean the end user who's actually using Google, using ChatGPT, especially I feel in 2020, the amount of video which is being produced is like, it's insane, the amount of video, and it's only growing. I mean, I used to, when I need a solution, I used to search on read blog posts. Then, it became like simpler blog posts instead of the confusing ones. It just became a linear step-by-step process. Quora, then it became a YouTube video, then it became a YouTube short. Like if I need something, I just watch a 15-second video on how it actually works. Now, where do you see the shift like in a business standpoint, if they're actually content driven, what are the few strategies do you suggest to actually make it worthy enough for them to plug it in some way for actual, search volume to actually get it from SEO? Do you have any suggestions towards using video to actually produce SEO worthy output?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And actually, it's interesting how your experience has entirely mirrored the sort of direction that Google is going in. So Google actually has a new filter in its search results called Perspectives, which is testing in the US at the moment. So it's testing it in the US only on mobile. But we're expecting this to roll out globally eventually. And what that does is when you search for a particular topic, where Google thinks that you want to see individual people's perspectives on things, is user-generated content from exactly what you said, YouTube Shorts, sometimes TikTok as well, Quora and Reddit. And there does seem to be a trend, particularly with younger generations, that they want to see, rather than, aggregated, professionally written information about certain topics, they want to hear from a person. They want to hear someone's individual experience, and they want to be able to look through results and say, okay, were they happy with that result? And I think this is something that we're seeing with also younger generation using TikTok as their primary search engine. Exactly the same sort of thing. So whether you want to buy a new phone case or you want to buy a new consultant, you can either go to established sites where you're not really sure where that information has come from. You're not really sure what the incentives are behind the person who's written that. Could it be a paid article? Could it be an affiliate article? Versus just going on TikTok and saying, I'm looking for a consultant to help me do X. And if you can find people that say, hey, I've worked with this consultant, they're great, you can quite quickly establish, okay, what sort of options are people going for here, and help you narrow down your selection that way. So I think from a business's perspective, making sure that you have a strategy to pick up, get your users, get your customers making these sorts of short form videos on your behalf, whether you incentivize them to do that or whether you just say, look, this type of thing really helps me, and explaining why and how it's going to help you get ranked in search. I think that's going to be increasingly important as we start to see these types of short form videos make their way into the search results page, which I think we will over the next couple of years. I think that's a big trend and a big direction that Google is going in, just because they want to do that, but also as a potential antidote to some of the AI search results, which may feel a bit generic at times. I think Google's sort of wanting to hedge its bets here and have two sort of alternative options for people so that they can choose and they can find the right one for them.
That's quite interesting, actually. Now, coming back, SEO is the dynamic of how it actually sounds and how much time it actually takes to get results itself. Sounds like too far away for any small business to actually take the first step. And I know you actually work with decent level companies so that you could actually help them get more exposure. But thinking about a typical business, who's roughly making $10, $20, $30,000, do you think they should actually focus on SEO in the first place, or do you think they should be the only pattern interrupt type of based company? What do you suggest? Or if you say they should, then what are the few steps they should actually start with to get the outcome or to reach the goal post overall?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think whatever your situation, your goals have to be sort of in relation to your resources. So you can absolutely do SEO even if you're a very, very small business with very limited marketing budget, or even if you're doing it yourself, you can absolutely do that. What's not going to happen is you're not going to beat established competitors that have much bigger budgets, much more resources, and are putting loads of time and energy into their SEO. That's very, very rare, at least these days. Back when I started SEO, we were outranking, established competitors very, very quickly. That's much harder these days. So I think if a business is small and they want to get traction with SEO, they absolutely can, but it's all about finding and picking the battles that you can win. So for most businesses, this is about identifying maybe less common search terms that they want to target, more specific. So let's say that you're, give me an example, Nick. What sort of business should we work with today?
Let's talk about your Instagram marketing agency as an example.
Perfect example. So you're an Instagram marketing agency, you want to start getting some more clients, you want to start using SEO to get those clients, but let's say you've got a very small budget, maybe you've only got half a day a month to spend on this. What I would do is I'd start talking to my clients and work out what their biggest pain points are, what their problems are. So let's say that as my Instagram marketing agency, I'm working with, heating engineers, or let's say electricians, right? What are electricians searching searching for when they're looking for an Instagram marketing agency? Well, maybe they're looking for electrician Instagram marketing tips. Now, that's a very specific search term. There's not going to be a huge search volume for that. So what I might do as that Instagram marketing agency is I might spend my half a day writing a really comprehensive guide on Instagram marketing for electricians. I might share some examples of great electricians that have done a really good job of there. I might give some quick tips. I might give a template of a content calendar that they can use. I might give them some suggestions on some of the topics that they might want to cover in their posts each day and that type of thing. Once I've got that guide, I then might say, okay, what websites are my target audience, these electricians, spending their time on? Well, there are a whole bunch of electrician trade sites out there, for example, sharing distributors that have, blogs on their sites. So I'd start reaching out to some of these sites and say, look, I've put together this really comprehensive guide for electricians on how to boost their visibility on Instagram. Would you be interested in me writing a post for your site sharing some of these tips? Now, some of them are going to say yes. A very small percentage are going to say yes, maybe 1 in 10. So I'm going to spend a couple hours reaching out to maybe 30 of them, and I'm going to pick up a few of these. I'm going to write the articles and get... What I've done there is I've created an asset which can rank on Google by electrician Instagram marketing guide, and then I've gone out and picked up some links from relevant publications which are going to be directed at my article, which is going to help it improve in its ranking. But I'm also going to be getting in front of some potential customers, these electricians, in these electrician publications. Now, as long as my Instagram marketing guide for electricians has a call to action, something to take your electrician Instagram account to the next level, contact our team and we'll do a free analysis of your account. We'll make some suggestions and some recommendations at no charge. And then if it looks like a good fit, we can put together a proposal. If I've got that call to action in my blog post, when those electricians land on my blog post and start reading through about how to boost their Instagram, I'm going to pick up some leads from that. So I think it's just about starting in quite a tight, narrow space, building out something that you know can get ranked. Once you've done that, you can do the same in the next industry, and the next industry, and the next industry. Over time, you'll start to build up all of these different sources of leads, and then you can start targeting more aggressive and more competitive search terms like Instagram marketing agency eventually. But the mistake that a lot of people will make is they'll go straight for targeting Instagram marketing agency. They'll get nowhere near the first page of Google. They'll get no traffic, and they get really disheartened. Niches that you know you can win and build out from there.
Love that, Tim. I mean, that was like absolutely a clear blueprint for any business to basically be super specific and actually rank. And there was a joke I actually heard, which is like the best place to hide a dead body is in the second page of the Google. And I think ranking, will really matter when you actually be super specific with the keyword. Appreciate you actually getting deeper. Now let's talk about a few more things, especially how you actually run your business and managing 80 people team and having a culture which actually is very result oriented and client driven and growth oriented is no joke. So I would love to understand your process and about few things here, especially let's start with hiring, how you actually go about hiring people, how do you find this talent, and how do you actually retain them for a longer run. It's no joke, you actually built 80 people team. So I would love to hear, in last 10 years, how did you actually go about this, and few learnings if you could share some.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, today it looks very different to how it looked when I first started. So I'm now involved in no hires at all. I don't get involved in any interviews or any recruitment. We have people that do that. But when I was starting out, the thing I realized quite quickly is I couldn't really tell who a good candidate was just from talking to them all the time. Sometimes some people are really good at presenting in an interview situation. Sometimes people are really bad at presenting in an interview situation. And for some tasks, let's say I'm trying to hire someone to build a website, I don't necessarily need them to be really engaging in an in-person style. So what I identified quite quickly is that the key to finding the best candidates was actually to give them a demo task. If I could give them a demo task that sort of approximated the work that they'd be doing for me, then I could quite quickly see, is this person competent? So most of the job interviews and job applications the job roles that we put out there now have some sort of demo task which has been very specifically designed to reflect the type of work that we're going to have people to do. Now straight away, maybe 60% of people won't bother doing, 60% of the applicants won't bother doing the demo task. Great, that saves us a whole bunch of time having to interview people that don't really want the job anyway. Then we'll get we get the 40% of the demo tasks back. Let's say 3 out of 4 of them aren't particularly great. Okay, great. That's also saved us a whole bunch of time interviewing people that aren't really right. So then we've got the 10% that have got good demo tasks, and then we tend to do 2 interviews. Someone will do the first interview, and the first interview is really about, I'm going to get this wrong, but there's 2 interviews. One of them is about their background and the sort of, what makes them tick and trying to find out how they work. And then the other interview is much more role specific. So it's asking them specific questions about the role to make sure they've got whatever experience we need. So the first one will be done by a recruiter or someone in the team who does the recruitment, and it's just like, is this person a good person? Are they a good worker? Are they going to do the job? And then the second role is done by a subject matter expert, so usually the head of the department, just to try and drill down a bit more on their specific knowledge. But I think recruitment is one of the areas that has really helped us grow. Because as the company has grown, I'm such a huge fan of giving people responsibility, even maybe before they think they're ready. So the person who's CEO of the company now started out as a real entry-level content writer. I hired her in 20 to do some content and backlinks and digital PR for me. And I quite quickly realized this person's so capable. She's so good at this. So I offered her that she could run the digital PR department, as it was called then. And she took that on, and she was hiring people, and she was growing and building out the processes. And I thought, great, this person's so capable, I think she could actually probably run the company. So I said, okay, do you want to become general manager? And she said, I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but yes. I was like, great, go for it. And she's been doing a fantastic job of that. And then this year I said, do you want to be CEO? Do you want to sort of be in charge of our whole strategic direction, all that type of stuff? And she said, I'm not sure I'm ready, but yes. So great. And we've done that a lot as we've grown, where we haven't necessarily brought in outside managers. We've looked at who have we got in the company who's ready to take it to the next level and who we believe in, even if they don't necessarily believe in themselves yet. With a bit of coaching, with a bit of development and support, you can often get people to step into the next level of the role. And I think that helps. You asked about culture. That really helps build out a good culture, because firstly, people can see that if they get ahead, they can start to move up, they can start to progress, and they can grow in the company. But the other thing it does is it means that those people who are the managers, they know how the company works. They know the work that the team is doing. They've maybe been in lots of different roles across the company, so they think in the Exposure Ninja way. We have hired outside managers, and we've had some incredible people, and I can think of one in particular who we hired fairly recently, an incredible manager that's brought in a lot of experience from outside. But most of the managers in the company, in fact almost all of them, have come up and they've worked their way through into their teams. They've got that great rapport because they used to do that person's job, but they also know how the company works. They've got close relationships, and we've been really fortunate to keep so many of our managers for so many years now, and I think that really helps to build a culture.
Wow, that's quite interesting. I mean, it really, like, from an employee perspective and a talent perspective, it just really gives the hope that this is the best fit for them to actually stay, because they could see a ladder for themselves, like, okay, I could actually climb up. Like, there's a content girl who actually joined, and a few years later, maybe it took a decade, but now she's a CEO. So that just gives an amazing culture. I will definitely get into deeper questions about culture and operations and stuff like that. But before that, as you already given like a very clear structure about hiring, tough, like I would say, especially like alpha entrepreneurs who like to like hire fast, they're really struggling with firing fast, or I would say like firing the wrong people as well. Now, I would love to get into understanding, when do you fire, why do you fire, and what incentive structures you actually give to your employees to give them a scope of growth. I would love to hear your answer on both of those questions.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the hire slow, fire fast thing, that is a great mantra, but with employment law, I don't know what it's like where people are listening from, but in the UK you can't just fire people fast. There has to be a formal process to go through. So I think one of the most important performance tools is really making sure that everyone has clear expectations. This sounds so basic, but do your team actually know what is required of someone in their role? Do they know how they're performing against those metrics? So we've had various different sort of performance management tools over the years, whether it's KPIs where people are tied to specific metrics and they know that I need to do this amount of things per day or whatever, and that's good. They set their own goals and they set their own targets for the year, and then we have quarterly meetings with them to just say, all right, how are you doing against these goals that we've agreed? And we use that as the basis for the performance conversations. situations, because I think the worst situation, certainly in the early days of Exposure Ninja, when I was doing a lot of this myself, I had some really terrible conversations with people where I'd be saying, this really isn't working, and they're looking at me thinking, I thought I was doing great. Honestly, I thought I was doing really well. And that made me realize that firing someone or someone being let go for a performance reason should never be a surprise. If it's a surprise, that's on me, because I haven't been clear enough about expectations. And if I'm not clear enough on expectations, how can I be upset with this person for not delivering? If they think, they think that they're doing great. So I think making sure that there is some standardized procedure for measuring people's performance across the company is absolutely vital. And then if someone is slipping below performance, from an employer's perspective, you need to be really careful that you are making sure to keep track of any expectations that they're missing. You need to keep notes on this stuff so that when it's time to have that conversation, you can be very clear with them and say, look, we're going to go on a performance improvement plan. It's going to last for 90 days. Here's the improvement that we need to see. And here are the reasons why we're going on this performance improvement plan. Otherwise, you open yourself up to all sorts of employment law trouble and stuff like that. And when you're running a company, the last thing that you want is people who are being fired. They don't know why they're being fired. They're kicking off, or people who you're having performance conversations with, and it's all a bit of a mess. It's the most stressful thing in business. So I think making sure that you've got your processes in place around HR is really important. Obviously, this is for like salaried employees, contracted employees. With freelancers, it's a bit easier, and a lot of businesses, when they're growing in the early days, will be built on an army of freelancers, and that makes it a lot easier to sort of just have a conversation with someone and say, look, I think we're going in a different direction, or we're looking for someone who's got skills in a different area. So that's a completely different thing. But once you start building an established sort of structure with regular employees, then you really do need to get this stuff right.
Quite interesting. If you could actually expand on that operations tracking part, and if you could give us like a high level overview on how it actually works, because that's one of the things which I see personally I struggle with, and a lot of my audience will definitely kind of relate the situation. So if you could name drop few tools or few techniques you actually track performance and make sure that you're operationally working well, if you could get into like a little bit of operational stuff, that would really help.
Yeah, sure. So we don't actually use that much software for this type of thing. We do have, operationally, we're very structured as a company. We have processes and systems for pretty much everything. We've got hundreds of them, from all of the digital marketing tasks that we do through to things like performance reviews, and we've got those conversations sort of scripted out, and we've built a library over the years of all this stuff. And I think that would be my main piece of advice, is if you're going into a performance conversation for the first time, have a think before you do it. Maybe do some research, maybe ask ChatGPT, what sort of structure do I need to take into this call? Build out a sort of a template structure, and then when you have that call, you can work through that agenda that you've put together beforehand, and then see how that call goes. If that call isn't great, or if you find yourself wanting to ask other questions, make sure that you update that script, that process, because over time what will happen is you'll continually refine all of these different processes every day, and that's what makes a better organization. So fast forward to today, we've got all of these things systemized. We've got everything that we do as a company broken down across all of the areas of the business. This is stored in project management software called Teamwork, and we'll go in every so often and refine and hone and improve all of these processes. And I think operationally that is absolutely key, because that's how you keep growing and developing. I think if you've got processes and they just stay static for years, eventually your teams sort of disregard them. They're like, yeah, I've done this before, I don't need to follow the process. Whereas if they're constantly evolving and improving, you actually become a better and better company. You're better than you were yesterday, because any learnings are going into the process and not just into your head.
I think that's key, especially in marketing, especially as agency, when you're competing with other people who are selling your clients better performance than what you're already doing. It's really key for you to keep evolving. Now, coming back, I think it's really like deep in your culture, looks like, the kind of the growth mindset, the real track where you have actually created for your employees to go up the ladder and sit on the top of the mountain as well. And actually thinking about culture, especially for companies who have less than 10 employees, typically that's most of the businesses. How do they actually go about that strong foundation for the culture? And if you could give us like little examples to help us how you actually keep the bonding between your people so that they actually have the vision and they're invested to give client results so that your clients don't churn. I think it's key. Overall, I would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually think culture is a lot easier as the company is smaller than when it becomes bigger, because as you become bigger, you have more and more layers of management between you and the people sort of on the edges of the company. So, there's plenty of people in Exposure Ninja that I've actually never personally spoken to. And therefore, if I'm going to try and build a consistent culture across the whole company, or if we're going to build a culture across the company, we need to do that through other people. Whereas when you're a relatively small team, everyone can see everyone's, maybe in the same room, or you're working directly with everyone. And I actually think it's much easier to build a strong culture in a company like that. Regardless of the company size, though, I think the key to company culture is actually not necessarily, buzzwords or values stuck on a wall. I think the key to company culture is having your leaders, whether that's you or whether that's you plus other people, demonstrate the sort of behavior that you want to emulate. I remember one of our team telling me one day, it was one of the sales team had seen me reply to a customer, or a potential customer, actually not even a potential customer. Someone had just emailed us asking a question, and this person had no chance of being a customer of Exposure Ninja. There was no money in it for us at all. And they had seen that I'd written a really detailed reply explaining exactly what I thought this person can do and how they could help themselves afford to work with us. And the salesperson saw that and thought, wow, okay, I've just realized our goal isn't just to sell. Our goal is to help people. Now, we could have had a company culture and vision day where we talk about how our goal is to help make the world a better place. But all of that is rubbish, and it's so easily forgotten. Whereas that little demonstration, or that person just happening to see that, said so much more. So I think the key is actually, from the leaders of the company, work out what you want, like how you want to be, what values you want to exhibit, and then make sure that you're doing that in front of people as often as possible, because they will copy you. People just absorb the behaviors of the leaders in the company. So if you're shouty and aggressive and late, guess what? They're going to be shouty, aggressive and late. If you're kind, if you're always helping, if you're doing and you check in with them, guess what? That's what they're going to do as well, because we're all looking for signals about how to behave in any scenario, and we're much more likely to copy other people's behaviors than look up on a wall and see 3 words and, just follow those words. It's all about modeling and role modeling, I think, really, and that's how you build culture.
Well, and I think that's the toughest thing to actually do, because, so many times it's really tough to kind of maintain that hierarchy and actually live up to what we actually say. And I think that's why there is differentiation between companies who actually scale to the companies who are actually stuck. And it really comes down to what you just explained, which is the culture. And I'm glad you're actually getting into the nitty-gritty stuff. Now, Tim, I would love to kind of get into, if you could actually give us actually convert them into clients from the top of the funnel to middle of the funnel to actually you closing and converting them into clients. I think it's really key, especially with the competition, looking at the marketing space and how people are selling services, to understand what is actually working for you. I think it's going to add a lot of value to the audience.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this is a big thing for a lot of agencies. The thing that they struggle with most is business development, and not just smaller agencies, but large agencies and large businesses as well. So I've been in the process of buying another company at the moment. They have basically very little established new business pipeline at all, and it tends to be up to the founder or someone high level in the business to go and reach out directly to new potential clients. And I think there are strengths in that, and the sort of networking, word of mouth referrals type growth strategy. But the major weakness, I think, is that it's just not scalable. If you're really going to scale your company, you need a new business pipeline that works regardless of your personal network or your personal connections. I was talking to another agency owner a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying she's actually considering retiring. And I was like, why are you retiring? This agency seems to be doing really well. She's like, my contacts, my friends in the industry are retiring, so I don't know where we're going to grow from. I don't know how to reach out to other companies because I'm sort of using up my black book of contacts. And I thought, how sad is that? She's worked all this time, and then the agency's just going to fizzle out because she hasn't built like a solid pipeline. So from the early days of EN, Exposure Ninja, we've been quite keen on building, really sort of robust new business pipelines. This is obviously, our industry. Our job is to build pipelines for our clients. So it would be weird if we didn't have a lot of leads ourselves. And we get so many leads that we actually can't process them. We can only really process about 20% of the leads that we get. And our strategy is basically share everything that we've learned. So we have books. We've got 5 or 6 different books on different topics inside digital marketing. They do well on Amazon. When someone reads those books, they talk about about the case studies, the things that we've done. They talk about our whole strategy for ranking websites or doing social media or doing digital PR and content marketing. And they read that and go, okay, well, this company seems to know what they're doing. We learn on YouTube, we show people like this is how to optimize your website, or like this is how big brands are doing it, or whatever. And we actually sort of show them. So we demonstrate that we've got skill and competence in this area. We also have lots of our own content that's ranking on Google, obviously, because that's what we do. We run plenty of ads. So we have all this sort of top of funnel content, which is very informational. It's very much about if you're going to type something into some sort of search engine, and probably at some point you're going to find an exposure into video, book, article, or whatever. Or podcast. So once we've got those, we funnel everyone to our website to request this free website and marketing review. And for us, that offering has, that's been consistent throughout our history. So we've designed this sort of packaged review that people can request. And again, we've completely standardized the approach because it's important to have a process. And that allows us, whatever we're doing in our marketing, we always refer back to the free website of day. And then not everyone we're able to give it to, but the ones who we do give it to, when we record them a video showing them some ways to improve their website, and we say, look, if you like the look of this, let's have another call. We can discuss your business in more detail. If they book that call, we then find out what their budget is and we discuss what sort of goals they have. If we think that we can help, we put together a proposal for them. If they like the proposal, they sign. And that's been our sort of standardized funnel that we've used since. We have other ways of getting in front of people, but we'll always direct them to this free website and marketing review. And by standardizing that, it means we can process a very large volume of leads.
That insight overall. Now, one of the common problems agencies are struggling with is definitely the delivery. If they have followed what you have mentioned, basically the standard agency sales process with granular details like you mentioned, I think they could actually get clients. There is a set of agencies who get clients, but they suck at delivery, or they kind of get burnt out in delivery. It's so easy for the entrepreneur himself who's doing the work, juggle between the sales and fulfillment and get frustrated. I've been in that space for a long time, especially when I was getting started as well. From your standpoint, now, how does that look like? If you could actually give some suggestions there.
Yeah, I was actually just before this, I was talking to an agency owner who's in a similar situation where they were still responsible for the delivery. They tried bringing on some people to do the work for them. They hadn't seen great results, so they'd fired all of those people and they were back to doing the delivery. And the conversation we had was, how's this going to change, right? You're going to be on new business and you're going to be on delivery, which means you're either signing loads of new clients or you're delivering loads of new clients. Once you finish delivering all the clients, then you need to go back to start selling some more. And you're always in this sort of feast and famine sine wave of delivery versus new business. So I think it's really important for the agency owner to delivery as soon as possible. It's not going to be possible to get completely out when you're in the early days, but what you can start doing is by standardizing your processes, you can have other people plug into those processes. So you can hire someone. They've been through the demo task, remember, which is a demonstration of what you're going to be getting them to do. You can then plug them into your process. Say, right, follow the process. Here's how it works. Here's what good looks like. You're going to do that whilst, oversee the work. And eventually you're going to have different people plugged into different parts of your process. The machine's going to be operating while you're overseeing it. Eventually you're going to get to this point where some of those are demonstrating that actually they might be quite good at management. So at that point you can say, right, you're going to go from doing this work to maybe half of the time you're going to do the work, half the time you're going to be overseeing other people that are now doing the work. That frees you up as the agency founder to continue working on new business, or to go and start new service lines, or to offer new consulting levels, or whatever you need to do. And I think that's really the key. Once you've standardized your processes, you can execute, you can fulfill much more reliably. If you look at, I had a business coach in the early days who said, McDonald's, right? McDonald's makes probably more burgers than everyone, but there's not a single chef in McDonald's, right? Because what they've done is they've standardized it where they can pull literally anyone off the street. Actually, I interviewed for McDonald's once and didn't get the job, but they could pull anybody other than me off the street, and that person, after a bit of training, could produce a completely standardized product. Now, that's not to say as agencies or coaches or consultants that we want to be selling the equivalent of a Big Mac, because that's a very derivative product. But actually, if you go to any Michelin star restaurant, the the process is exactly the same. That chef has very specifically designed that dish to be the same every time. And it's not necessarily the chef who's making the dish every time. The chef might be standing at the window saying, yep, that one's good, that one needs to be fixed, go and change that. But by standardizing the process, they've massively scaled the ability of that organization to fulfill on orders. And that's a crucial step any business has to go through if it's going to grow.
Yeah, I love that. I think productization or standardization of a service delivery, I think, is the key. And I believe that's how you're able to handle so many clients with 80 plus employees, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you get to, I don't know what the limit is for me. It was probably 5 or 6 clients. Once we got to 5 or 6 clients, I could no longer keep on top of what's going on. Now we've got clients where we might be doing, 3 or 4 hours of work for them each month. One person can't even monitor the entire output for that client, right? So unless things are standardized, unless you have chains of command, you're going to end up with massively variable outputs there. So you say, that standardization or productization is super important in a service business like what we do.
Yeah, love that, Tim. I do have a few questions here for the next 10 minutes. So let's get into the tools you actually use to manage your projects, your clients, and productivity, especially at an AI perspective, if you have added any new stack. We would love to know that.
Yeah, so we use Google, we use loads of Google Sheets, we use Google Docs, we use Google Drive. That's sort of where most of our work is done, really. We use Teamwork as our project management software. We use Slack as our communication channel. I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Slack, really, because it means that people are spending a huge amount of their time like communicating quite inefficiently and having their attention split between multiple channels. And you've got that sort of notification syndrome, haven't you, where you feel like you always need to go back to it. So I don't think it is great for focus, but until we find something else, we use that. As for AI tools, a lot of our content team will use ChatGPT. We don't use ChatGPT for any sort of published content, except in very, very few circumstances. But we love using it for sort of brainstorming and coming up with ideas. So we like using it as a sort of creative co-pilot rather than a slave that does our work for us. Because if you've ever tried ChatGPT for content, the stuff it produces, even if you use crazy creative prompts, it feels very derivative. It feels very exhausting and boring to read. And that type of stuff doesn't typically tend to work very well as a marketing asset, because you really need to engage the audience if you're going to get some sort of business result from it. And ChatGPT content we found not to be particularly good. Jasper AI is slightly better. We use that sometimes as a content writer, but we'll always have a human editorial team and human writers go through and actually make it readable and make it interesting. Other than that, we use a time management software called HubStaff, and HubStaff really simple. It just allows people to sort of clock in and clock out, so they know how many hours we've worked. We know how many hours they've worked. If you're in a physical office, you'd see people coming in at 9 and you'd see them leaving at 5. We're completely remote and always have been. So to have a large team, you need to have a process to work out, oh wow, this person actually hasn't turned up to work today. We need to go and check in on them, make sure they're okay, and make sure that their work is covered. So we use HubStaff for that. What else do we use? I think that's pretty much it on our sort of regular stack. We actually don't use too many tools. I'm going to get people watching this from the team be like, no, we use loads of tools, but those are the only ones I can think of.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Now, you recently stepped down as CEO. So Tim, what is like your typical daily routine right now? How does that look like?
Yeah, so my job now is focusing on acquisitions and building out a group of companies. So I'm still doing work at Exposure Ninja. I still hang out with the team online, and I'm involved in our marketing. So today I've been recording videos for our YouTube channel, but I've also been talking to banks and finance providers as part of funding the deal. I've been doing some work on due diligence and accounts. I've been talking to some other agencies who we might be thinking of buying. And that's sort of the majority of my work now. It's sort of talking to other businesses who we might be interested in acquiring, going through financial statements and talking to banks and stuff like that, which is quite fun because I haven't been doing this for very long, but over time I'm sure it's going to become very boring. So I'll end up standardizing it and then hiring people to do each of those pieces of the work so that I can work on other strategic things. You can see the model there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's a very important key for your success, looks like. Now coming back, why PE though? Why are you trying to go from like an agency and a well-built agency to actually becoming more of a PE, an acquisition merger kind of model? What is like your vision here? Just trying to understand what you're trying to build.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've wanted to do it for quite a while. I think a couple of reasons. Firstly, we've identified that, if you've got a skill like a lot of coaches and consultants have, if you've got one particular skill, for us it's marketing. We've spent ages ages helping loads of businesses grow using our marketing skill. We've helped companies grow from, in revenue to $4.5 million in revenue. Some we've helped grow to 8 figures in revenue from almost nothing. And I think over time you look at that and you think, all right, so this marketing skill can actually be put to use in all sorts of different scenarios. Why don't we go and buy our own companies and do that there around with the companies as well? So that's part of it, is just a sort of a curiosity about let's do some of this stuff for our own companies, because we've seen how this works so well for our clients. Another part of this is that as we've grown, we've developed some people and they've been able to step up into more and more senior roles. But we're at a stage now where we're a pretty well-structured team. We've got a senior leadership team, we've got COO and CEO, then we've got a management team, then we've got team leaders, and then we've got, workers underneath that. If we want to continue giving next steps, succession opportunities to people, we're going to need more roles. So I'm looking at this thinking, unless we're going to start losing some of our senior people because there aren't more senior jobs for them to move into, I don't want to do that. These people are great. We want to keep them. So I'm thinking, well, let's get some businesses that maybe don't have that sort of organizational structure, and then that's going to allow us to offer these people roles in these other companies and build them out. Because there's a lot of agencies, a lot of companies at the sort of 20 to 50 person size where they really don't have good standardized processes. They really don't have great management teams and structures. And I'm looking at this thinking, we know how to do that. We know how to help these companies grow to the next level. So let's just do a few of them and see where it goes. So I'm just going to be doing that. It's going to be a bit of fun. I'm going to learn something either way, and we'll see how it goes. See where it gets us to.
Interesting, for sure. Now let's talk about your life's biggest achievement and what's like your next bigger goal overall.
Life's biggest achievement? That's a really good question. I don't know, to be honest. I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that I never compromise on health or family. So after this podcast, I'm going to go and hang out with my family, and I'm going to, I very rarely miss any sort of family time. As I make time to go and see my son is 5 and my daughter is 1, and anytime they're doing anything with school or nursery, I'm always there. And I definitely I put business in a box, and yes, it consumes my head and I'm always thinking about stuff, but I don't compromise on family. I also don't compromise on health. So I work out twice a day, and I'm pretty rigid with that, and I don't tend to compromise on that. So I think it would be easy to just let business and let work consume your life completely. And there are stages, for example, when you're growing a business in the early days, where maybe it has to consume your life. Talk to anyone who's done that for a long period of time. They start to regret that. And they start to, realize that actually some of the sacrifices that they're making maybe aren't worthwhile. So for me, I'm quite proud of being able to maintain a sort of balanced approach to life, I think. And I'm hoping that I look back on that with pride, knowing that I haven't missed the most important sort of years of my children's lives, really.
That's really exciting, actually. And I think it really gives a message to people who are like in the hustle mode, and to kind of understand that, they only have limited time here to actually spend for themselves and with their family. Now, coming back as entrepreneurs, Tim, I don't think we look at our mistakes as the mistakes. You always learn from them. That's how you've been, and everybody is. Coming back, what are these, like, if you could name a few mistakes and, be like, oh, avoid these things, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of mistakes that I've made are when I've felt a particular way, but I haven't trusted myself. I've maybe listened to other people. I've let other people change my mind without enough, resistance. We've also made mistakes. We've started new projects, and we've started an agency for very small leads. We recently started an AI consultancy business as well, and these didn't work, and we had to shut them down for various reasons. But when we do that, we start them with a very specific set of milestones. So we'll say, right, you've got 3 months to hit the first milestone. First milestone is let's get some clients. Second milestone, next 3 months, is let's get to profitability or whatever. And if you don't hit any of these milestones along the way, then we shut it down. So I think I've learned through that sort of iterative approach that if you're going to start a new project, you have to have clear criteria about whether you're going to continue with it. And that came from starting projects earlier on in my life, which ended up just being a cash drain, or I started something that didn't work and I kept pursuing it for too long and it just wasn't producing the results. But because I didn't have a clear sort of, right, that's enough, I've missed my targets, time to just move on to the next thing. I kind of let those things drag on a bit. So that's been another theme of my life. If you're very optimistic, you just want things to work, don't you? And you're like, right, I'm going to keep doing this. I don't want to quit because that'll be a loser mentality. But actually, you know, when you've spent like 6 months doing something and it's not working, you're probably just wasting your time. So there's plenty of opportunities. Set clear criteria at the start. If you're not meeting the criteria, go and do one of the other opportunities in the world, because there's, you know, there's millions of opportunities. You could be doing anything right now, couldn't you? Actually, that's a big mistake I made. When I was a drummer, I realized I was spending my time playing on songs I didn't really like, for musicians that I knew were never going to get anywhere. And after doing that for like 5 years, I remember exactly where I was. I was like, wow, I'm working super hard at this. I could be doing anything. If I was working this hard in investment banking, I'd be one of the top investment bankers. If I was working this hard in politics, I'd be a really successful politician. So I think one of the mistakes I made was choosing the wrong game to play. And that's part of the reason I decided to get into acquisitions and growing the group, is because you can actually choose any game. You can choose to master any game you like. The results and the work required, you know that you're going to put in 100% effort. You're that sort of person, right? So pick the right game. Don't spend your entire life playing a game that even the best people basically lose, right? So
yeah, I think
that's something I'm going to share with my children. Like, you know, you get people who are passionate about all sorts of things. Sometimes your passion shouldn't be a job. And my lesson from being a semi-failed drummer for so many years was like, some things are just best left as passions. Pick the right sport. Let's go.
Yeah, I think the vehicle is definitely important. And Tim, a few more minutes if you have, I want to finish up the last questions we actually have. Like, it might take 3 more times. Is it okay? 3 more minutes?
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go.
Okay, perfect. Edit. Now coming back, Tim, looking at your situation right now, you are into the acquisitions game and you actually exited, I would say, step down as a CEO. What actually inspires you to keep going? What is like the things which actually motivates you right now? And who are the key people involved in your journey?
I actually don't know what motivates me. I feel like I'm driven by a sort of a motor that I can't really turn off. I think growth and learning and development and pushing are really fun and addictive. One of my personal mantras is, this discomfort is my growth. And it's about, I really like the feeling of pushing through discomfort. And anytime I find that I'm a bit sort of stable in my life, I know that I need to push a little bit harder. So running Exposure Ninja, I did feel a bit stable. I felt comfortable giving my best, because, you know, I could just turn up each week and do what I do and clock out. And I didn't really think about it in the evenings. I wasn't hyper engaged. I wasn't super switched on with it. I didn't feel the blood sort of pulsing through my veins. And that made me realize, okay, I need to push myself. I need to push myself to do something different. So I think that's what drives me. As for key people, we've got some great people inside Exposure Ninja. Some of our team are absolutely amazing, you know, whether they're strong operationally or whether they're strong sales or visionary. I think I get a lot of energy from talking to our team and feeling like, wow, I'm nowhere near the smartest person in this room. So I find that's quite exciting. And I think if you're building a company, it's important to surround yourself by people who really energize you and who feel better than you at their jobs, because that's going to keep pushing you as well. If you're surrounded by people that are very average, then that really can't fail to sort of seep into your attitude and the energy that you bring as well, which is going to suck. So yeah, I'd say mostly the people inside Exposure Ninja, and yeah, that's pretty much what's driven me.
Yeah, love that, Tim. Now that was a great session overall, Tim. Where can our audience actually find your help?
So if they just search for Exposure Ninja anywhere, you'll see me. So YouTube or podcasts or on Google or whatever, really. You can follow me personally. I'm Tim Cameron Kitchen on all the social platforms. I don't tend to post much, really. Most of my output goes from Exposure Ninja. But you can also just drop me an email if you want to chat. You can just drop me an email, timcameronkitchen@gmail.com. I'm happy to chat to people.
Love that. Now, any last word before we conclude the whole session for today, Tim?
I think just be careful about making sure that the game you have chosen is a conscious choice and you haven't just drifted into it. That's my main piece of advice. It's so easy to just get carried along on the lazy river, as I call it, just floating to the next thing. And then you get to a point where you're actually unable to make a change because it's the only thing that you know. So just every so often, take a step up, say, if I could do anything, what would I be doing? And, try and get as close to that as you possibly can.
That's a deep and meaningful advice. Appreciate your time, Tim. This was definitely wonderful. Thank you so much for transparently sharing a lot of the knowledge and sharing golden nuggets. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the session so far. If you need more help, check out Exposure Ninja. And I will be coming back with another amazing guest just like Tim for the next podcast. Bye for today. Thanks, Tim, for jumping on.
Thanks, Nick. Great to be here.
Yeah, definitely.